Welcome to a journey into the world of the Vikings, fierce explorers, skilled warriors, and masterful craftsmen. Over the next few minutes, we'll uncover 100 fascinating facts about their lives, adventures, and secrets. From their ships and battles to their culture and discoveries, every detail reveals how these remarkable people shaped history. Chapter 1. The Vikings weren't just raiders, they were explorers. Long before Columbus, they crossed the Atlantic and reached North America around 1000 AD. Their ships, long and sleek, could glide silently across both oceans and rivers. Imagine that, a world where they were the ultimate adventurers, navigating by stars and landmarks. Their courage and curiosity defined an entire era. Chapter 2. Viking longships were masterpieces of engineering. Built with overlapping planks called clinker construction, they were flexible and could withstand stormy seas. With a shallow draft, these ships could sail up rivers and surprise inland villages. Speed and stealth were their weapons. Vikings didn't just travel, they conquered the waters themselves, mastering design centuries ahead of their time. Chapter 3. Vikings loved tattoos, although we mostly know this from descriptions by outsiders. These designs weren't just for beauty, they symbolized strength, protection, and achievements in battle. Every pattern told a story, like a personal diary on skin. Tattoos connected them to gods, ancestors, and their own courage, showing that even in chaos, Vikings cared deeply about identity and legacy. Chapter 4. Contrary to myths, Vikings didn't wear horned helmets. Archaeologists have found no evidence of horns in battle gear. The horned image comes from 19th century theater costumes. Real Viking helmets were simple, practical, and deadly efficient. They protected warriors while keeping them light and mobile. Efficiency ruled over style in Viking combat, proving they were thinkers, not just brutes. Chapter 5. Vikings weren't just warriors, they were traders. They traveled as far as Byzantium and Baghdad, exchanging furs, amber, and weapons. These trade routes connected Europe to Asia, centuries before the Silk Road flourished. Vikings were skilled negotiators, knowing when to strike and when to trade. Their economy wasn't random, it was strategic, showing brains alongside brawn. In Chapter 6. Viking society had laws and councils called things. Communities gathered to discuss disputes, decide punishments, and vote on matters of law. Justice wasn't private, it was public and shared. Surprisingly democratic for their time, Vikings debated and made decisions collectively. Even raiders needed rules, proving they valued fairness alongside ferocity. Chapter 7. Viking warriors used a special technique called the shield wall in battle. Soldiers locked shields side by side, creating a moving fortress. Front lines protected everyone behind them, and momentum crushed enemies. It required discipline, coordination, and trust, a mix of strategy and teamwork that made Vikings deadly yet organized, not just chaotic fighters. Chapter 8. Vikings explored icy lands using clever science. They knew how to read sunstones to locate the sun on cloudy days. Sunstones, crystals like Iceland's spar, refracted light and helped navigation. This simple optical trick allowed them to sail accurately in the north, proving that Vikings combined observation, experimentation, and practical science to survive harsh seas. Chapter 9. Vikings loved storytelling. Skalds, their poets, performed sagas that combined history, myth, and heroics. These weren't just entertainment. They preserved culture and taught lessons. A single story could inspire courage, warn of betrayal, or immortalize deeds. Through words and performance, Vikings built legends that continue to echo more than 1,000 years later. Chapter 10. Vikings farmed too. Not everyone was a raider. Many lived as farmers, tending fields and animals. Crops like barley, oats, and rye were staples. Farms supported villages and expeditions, showing that Viking life balanced survival, commerce, and exploration. Their hands weren't just for swords. They cultivated life, proving versatility was a Viking superpower. Chapter 11. Vikings drank ale daily, not just mead. Brewing was a skilled craft and recipes varied by region. Ale fueled long voyages, battles, and celebrations. It wasn't just a drink, it was nutrition and morale. Sharing a horn of ale created bonds, built trust, and celebrated victories. For Vikings, even simple pleasures carried meaning and tradition. Chapter 12. Viking women held surprising power. They could own land, inherit property, and run farms while men were away raiding. Some even fought alongside men or led ships. While not equal in every aspect, Viking women shaped society, proving that influence wasn't limited to the battlefield. Strength came in many forms. Chapter 13. Vikings practiced burial rituals that reveal fascinating beliefs. Rich burials included ships, weapons, and treasure, meant to accompany the dead in the afterlife. Cremation was common, but some were buried intact, with ceremonial goods. These rites show Vikings believed in a journey beyond life, connecting their earthly deeds to spiritual destiny. Chapter 14. Viking shields were round, lightweight, and made from layered wood. They weren't just defense, they were offensive tools used to bash opponents or create space. Painted with colors and symbols, shields reflected clan identity and pride. The simple circle became a versatile weapon, blending art, practicality, and psychological warfare. Chapter 15. Vikings raided monasteries not only for treasure but knowledge. Monks kept books, maps, and history. By taking these items, Vikings gained literacy, geography, and cultural insight. Raiders weren't only motivated by gold. They absorbed wisdom from the people they conquered, turning plunder into education. Chapter 16. Vikings loved jewelry and crafted intricate designs in silver and gold. Brooches, rings, and armlets weren't just decoration. They displayed status, clan affiliation, and artistic skill. Jewelry was portable wealth, traded or given as gifts, connecting beauty, economy, and social influence in one small object. Chapter 17. Viking swords were symbols of status. Forged with layered steel, each blade was unique, often decorated with runes. Owning a sword wasn't just for battle, it represented honor, family, and legacy. Warriors prized their swords like modern collectors value rare items, showing respect for craftsmanship and tradition. Chapter 18. Vikings believed in multiple gods: Odin, Thor, Freyja. They governed war, fertility, and wisdom. Mythology shaped daily life, rituals, and ethics. Stories of gods fighting, tricking, and protecting inspired human behavior. Viking religion wasn't abstract. It influenced choices, bravery, and morality in a world of uncertainty. Chapter 19. Viking runes were more than letters. They held magic and meaning. Carved into stone, wood, or metal, runes recorded history, offered protection, and communicated messages. Each symbol carried energy and intention, blending communication, art, and mysticism in a system both practical and spiritual. Chapter 20. Vikings explored far beyond Europe. From Iceland to Greenland, even the coast of North America, their curiosity drove expansion. Mapping unknown lands required courage and skill. These voyages weren't random. They were calculated, using observation, experience, and experimentation, turning the Viking world into a network of exploration that changed history. Chapter 21. Vikings often tattooed symbols of animals like wolves and ravens, believing they shared traits with these creatures. Wolves represented cunning, ravens symbolized intelligence. Tattoos were personal and spiritual, connecting humans to nature. They weren't just art. They conveyed courage, identity, and connection to the unseen world, showing Vikings combined aesthetics with meaningful symbolism. Chapter 22. Vikings had advanced metalworking skills. They forged weapons, armor, and tools with precision. Patterns in steel made blades stronger and more flexible. This craftsmanship wasn't just functional, it was an art form. Knowledge of metallurgy allowed them to create durable equipment that gave warriors an advantage, merging science and skill in every strike. Chapter 23. Vikings loved storytelling competitions called flyting. Participants exchanged clever insults and witty rhymes. It was a battle of words, entertaining villages while teaching social rules. Winning flyting proved intelligence, creativity, and verbal skill, showing that Vikings valued the mind as much as the sword. Words were weapons, too. Chapter 24. Vikings used animal hides to make clothing and armor. Leather was durable, flexible, and practical for travel. Wool provided warmth, essential in icy climates. Their clothing reflected survival skills, blending function with tribal identity. Every stitch mattered, proving that Viking life balanced comfort, protection, and expression. Chapter 25. Vikings were early map makers. They sketched coastlines, rivers, and landmarks to navigate long distances. Maps weren't precise like modern ones, but they worked. Observations, landmarks, and memory created mental and physical guides. These skills highlight Viking ingenuity in exploration, blending science, art, and survival into practical tools. Chapter 26. Vikings understood astronomy. They tracked the sun, moon, and stars for navigation. Even cloudy days didn't stop them. They used sunstones to locate the sun's position. Knowledge of celestial patterns allowed voyages across vast seas. Science wasn't a luxury. It was survival, guiding Vikings to lands far beyond their homes. Chapter 27. Vikings had a unique sense of humor. Tales of trickery, clever escapes, and exaggerated feats amused villages. Humor wasn't trivial. It taught lessons and preserved culture. Stories made children brave and adults wise. Laughter and wit were part of survival, showing that Vikings understood life needed joy alongside danger. Chapter 28. Vikings mined iron, copper, and tin for tools and weapons. Mining required knowledge of geology and fire. Smelting transformed raw rock into usable metal. This science allowed Vikings to build stronger ships, sharper swords, and durable tools, proving they combined practical chemistry with ingenuity centuries ahead of their time. Chapter 29. Vikings practiced dentistry, surprisingly advanced for their era. They drilled teeth, cleaned infections, and used herbs for pain relief. Healthy teeth were vital for eating tough food during raids and long voyages. Their attention to dental care shows Vikings combined biology, observation, and practical medicine to improve daily life. Chapter 30. Vikings respected the sea. They knew tides, currents, and weather patterns. Storms could be deadly, so observation was crucial. Navigators read clouds, waves, and bird flight to predict conditions. This careful attention to the environment allowed them to travel safely, turning nature into a partner rather than an enemy on epic journeys. Chapter 31. Vikings valued oral history. Stories were passed down through generations by word of mouth, preserving culture and knowledge. Every tale of battles, voyages, or heroes carried lessons for survival. Memory was a tool as vital as a sword. By speaking and listening, Vikings connected past and future, keeping traditions alive without written records. Chapter 32. Vikings used daggers called seekses for both work and combat. They were versatile tools for hunting, crafting, and fighting. Unlike large swords, seekses were practical, easy to carry, and essential in daily life. Owning one symbolized readiness and self-reliance, showing that even small tools were powerful in Viking society. Chapter 33. Vikings often used shields not only for protection, but to create elaborate signals. By positioning them in specific ways, groups communicated silently across battlefields. This coordination required planning and understanding, turning shields into tactical instruments. Communication, strategy, and art merged, demonstrating Vikings were clever warriors, not only fierce fighters. Chapter 34. Vikings were skilled blacksmiths. They layered steel to create stronger swords, combining soft and hard metals. This technique improved flexibility and sharpness. Blacksmiths were respected artisans, and their work influenced survival and warfare. Science and craftsmanship intertwined, making weapons both functional and beautiful, a testament to Viking innovation. Chapter 35. Vikings used wool and linen for sails. Choosing strong fibers allowed long voyages across unpredictable seas. Sails were carefully maintained and repaired, essential for speed and maneuverability. This knowledge of materials science helped Vikings dominate maritime travel, proving they understood physics and engineering long before modern methods. Chapter 36. Vikings believed in luck and omens. Observing birds, clouds, and animal behavior guided decisions. Superstitions weren't blind. They were early forms of pattern recognition. Reading nature helped predict storms, find land, or avoid danger. Viking spirituality blended observation with faith, showing practical wisdom could coexist with belief in gods. Chapter 37. Vikings practiced dentistry using simple tools and herbs. Some drilled teeth to remove decay, while others applied plant-based remedies. Oral health was vital for eating, traveling, and fighting. Even in harsh conditions, Vikings addressed medical needs with observation, experimentation, and creativity, blending survival skills with early science. Chapter 38. Vikings had a musical culture. Instruments like lyres, flutes, and drums accompanied rituals, celebrations, and storytelling. Music enhanced oral traditions, teaching history and moral lessons. It wasn't mere entertainment. It reinforced identity, memory, and community. Art and culture traveled with Vikings as they explored new lands. Chapter 39. Vikings were aware of hygiene. Bathing in rivers and saunas was common, surprising outsiders. Cleanliness was practical, reducing disease and maintaining morale during long voyages. Saunas weren't just relaxation, they strengthened health and social bonds. Vikings understood that small routines contributed to survival and well-being. Chapter 40. Vikings used ropes and knots expertly. From ship rigging to traps, knot skills were essential. Different knots had specific functions, showing precision and planning. Ropes weren't simple tools. They were lifelines for sailing, building, and warfare. Knowledge of knots combined physics, dexterity, and practicality in everyday Viking life. Chapter 41. Vikings were skilled metalworkers, creating intricate jewelry with silver, gold, and bronze. Brooches, arm rings, and pendants were worn as status symbols and traded as portable wealth. Patterns often reflected myths, nature, or achievements. Jewelry wasn't just decoration. It was communication, identity, and economy combined, showcasing the artistry and practicality of Viking culture. Chapter 42. Vikings often used runestones to commemorate important events or people. These stones recorded battles, voyages, and family ties, preserving history for generations. Carvings were symbolic and sometimes magical, believed to protect or inspire. Through runestones, Vikings combined storytelling, art, and memory, turning stone into a lasting cultural archive. Chapter 43. Vikings were strategic raiders. They planned attacks carefully, choosing timing, location, and target. Raids weren't chaotic. They relied on reconnaissance, surprise, and coordination. Understanding geography, weather, and enemy routines allowed them to maximize success. Brute force was paired with cunning, demonstrating that Viking warfare was as tactical as it was fierce. Chapter 44. Vikings farmed using crop rotation and animal husbandry. Fields of barley, oats, and rye provided staple foods, while livestock supplied meat, milk, and hides. Efficient farming supported both villages and expeditions, allowing Vikings to sustain life during long winters and risky voyages. Agriculture and exploration worked hand in hand for survival. Chapter 45. Vikings understood basic medicine. They used herbs for pain, infections, and wounds. Observing natural remedies helped maintain health during travel and war. Knowledge of plants, combined with experience, allowed survival in harsh conditions. Medicine wasn't advanced by today's standards, but Viking practices reflected observation, experimentation, and practicality. Chapter 46. Vikings often used shields painted with bright colors or symbols. These designs identified clans, intimidated enemies, and boosted morale. Art and strategy merged, turning a defensive tool into a statement of identity. Shields reflected personality, loyalty, and psychology, proving Vikings considered both appearance and function in warfare. Chapter 47. Vikings were excellent horsemen. Horses were used for travel, battle, and herding. Strong, agile breeds allowed them to move quickly across rough terrain. Mastery of riding enhanced mobility and raiding efficiency. Horses were more than transport. They were tactical assets, showcasing the Viking ability to adapt tools and animals for strategy. Chapter 48. Vikings built fortified settlements called ring forts, with circular designs for defense. Wooden walls and earthworks protected communities against attacks. The design allowed observation, coordination, and rapid deployment of warriors. Engineering knowledge and strategic thinking merged, demonstrating Vikings' ability to plan long-term security beyond raiding. Chapter 49. Vikings valued storytelling through sagas, written later by scribes. These epic tales combined history, myth, and heroism, preserving culture and inspiring courage. Oral tradition ensured survival of knowledge before writing was widespread. Stories educated, entertained, and immortalized heroes, showing Vikings understood the power of narrative in shaping society. Chapter 50. Vikings often engaged in trade, exchanging furs, weapons, and crafts across Europe and Asia. Markets connected distant regions, spreading culture and ideas. Trading wasn't random. It required negotiation, trust, and logistics. Commerce allowed Vikings to survive, thrive, and influence the world far beyond their homelands, blending economy with exploration. Chapter 51. Vikings were skilled navigators using natural cues. They observed stars, sun, birds, and ocean currents to find land. Even on cloudy days, they used sunstones to detect sunlight direction. Navigation required knowledge, experience, and observation. Mastering the sea allowed Vikings to explore far beyond Scandinavia, turning nature into a tool for discovery. Chapter 52. Vikings valued education and practical skills. Young people learned farming, crafting, sailing, and combat from elders. Knowledge was hands-on, passed through experience rather than books. This training ensured survival, efficiency, and competence in raids and daily life. Skills shaped identity, proving Viking culture prized mastery alongside courage. Chapter 53. Vikings practiced storytelling rituals called sagas during feasts. These performances combined history, myth, and humor, teaching morals and preserving heritage. Storytelling wasn't entertainment alone. It reinforced community, memory, and identity. Through spoken word, Vikings connected generations, proving oral tradition was central to cultural continuity and education. Chapter 54. Vikings used spears as their primary weapons. Spears were versatile, light, and could be thrown or used in close combat. Designs varied by length and weight, optimized for strategy. Spears were both tools and symbols of skill, showing that efficiency and precision mattered as much as strength in battle. Chapter 55. Vikings mined salt to preserve food. Salt extended the shelf life of fish and meat, vital for long voyages and winters. Knowledge of preservation ensured survival during expeditions and storage. Vikings combined chemistry, observation, and preparation, showing foresight and practicality in sustaining life across challenging environments. Chapter 56. Vikings were skilled in shipbuilding. Longships used overlapping planks for flexibility and speed. Shallow drafts allowed river navigation and surprise raids. Sailors maintained ships carefully, understanding hydrodynamics and materials. Shipbuilding wasn't just craftsmanship, it was science, enabling exploration, trade, and conquest across vast distances. Chapter 57. Vikings often used horns to signal during battle. Different sounds indicated commands, warnings, or celebrations. This communication method required coordination, practice, and understanding. Sound became strategy, turning simple instruments into tactical tools that enhanced teamwork and efficiency in combat. Chapter 58. Vikings valued feasting, combining food, music, and storytelling. Feasts were social, strengthening bonds, resolving disputes, and celebrating achievements. Shared meals reinforced community and identity. Rituals included songs, tales, and games, blending education with enjoyment. Food wasn't just sustenance, it was culture and cohesion. Chapter 59. Vikings respected nature. They observed animal behavior, tides, and weather patterns to guide decisions. Understanding the environment allowed successful hunting, navigation, and survival. Nature wasn't just a resource, it was a teacher. Observation, timing, and adaptation were vital skills, reflecting Viking intelligence and practical science. Chapter 60. Vikings used axes for both work and combat. Versatile in chopping wood or fighting, axes symbolized strength and utility. Designs varied by weight and shape, showing optimization for specific tasks. Axes reflected the Viking ability to combine function, power, and practicality in everyday life and war. Chapter 61. Vikings often traded amber, a precious resin from trees, across Europe. It was valued for jewelry, charms, and decoration. Amber trade connected distant regions and cultures, showing that Vikings were not just raiders but merchants. This exchange spread wealth, ideas, and artistic influence across borders, blending commerce with culture. Chapter 62. Vikings built homes called longhouses. These wooden structures housed families and livestock under one roof. Central hearths provided warmth and cooking. Longhouses were practical, durable, and adaptable to harsh climates. Living arrangements reinforced community, shared labor, and survival strategies, reflecting Viking ingenuity in architecture and daily life. Chapter 63. Vikings used helmets for protection, often made from iron with simple designs. Contrary to myths, they didn't have horns. Helmets were lightweight, practical, and designed for mobility. Protecting warriors effectively mattered more than aesthetics, showing that Viking engineering prioritized function and survival over dramatics. Chapter 64. Vikings respected craftsmanship in pottery and weaving. Everyday items like bowls, textiles, and ropes were carefully made for durability and function. Artistry wasn't separate from utility. It enhanced both beauty and practicality. Skills in these crafts supported daily life and trade, highlighting attention to detail and efficiency in Viking society. Chapter 65. Vikings had knowledge of herbal medicine. Plants were used for pain relief, infection control, and healing wounds. Observation, trial, and experience informed their remedies. Even on long voyages, medicinal practices improved survival and well-being. Science, observation, and tradition merged to maintain health under challenging conditions. Chapter 66. Vikings were strong swimmers. Knowledge of rivers, currents, and water survival allowed them to travel efficiently. Swimming skills were vital for crossing rivers during raids and expeditions. Physical fitness, courage, and practical knowledge of water ensured success, showing Vikings combined athleticism with survival instincts. Chapter 67. Vikings collected and stored food carefully. Dried fish, salted meat, and preserved grains ensured survival during harsh winters and long journeys. Storage techniques required knowledge of environment, materials, and timing. Planning ahead was essential. Preservation wasn't luxury. It was survival strategy, showing foresight in Viking culture. Chapter 68. Vikings often sang or chanted during work and travel. Music maintained rhythm, morale, and coordination. Songs were both entertaining and instructive, passing knowledge and tradition. Sound connected people, reinforced teamwork, and strengthened culture. Music was a tool, a teaching method, and a cultural anchor for Viking communities. Chapter 69. Vikings had specialized tools for blacksmithing and crafting. Hammers, tongs, and anvils allowed precise shaping of metal. Tools were adapted for specific tasks, showing innovation and expertise. Craftsmanship wasn't casual. It required skill, observation, and experimentation, producing durable weapons, tools, and art essential for daily life. Chapter 70. Vikings built bridges and docks to facilitate travel and trade. Engineering knowledge helped move goods and people efficiently. Structures were designed with local materials, considering stability and environmental conditions. Practical engineering supported expansion, commerce, and community growth, reflecting Viking intelligence and resourcefulness in infrastructure. Chapter 71. Vikings practiced early forms of astronomy. They tracked stars, the sun, and the moon to plan voyages and seasonal activities. Observation of celestial patterns guided navigation and farming. Knowledge of the sky wasn't abstract. It was practical science. helping Vikings survive, explore, and expand across unknown territories with remarkable accuracy. Chapter 72. Vikings used animal fats for lighting and heating. Lamps burned whale or seal oil, providing light during long nights. Fats were also used in cooking and preservation. Understanding materials and their applications was practical science. Resourcefulness ensured survival in cold, dark climates, blending biology, chemistry, and daily life. Chapter 73. Vikings often used sleds and carts for transportation. These tools carried goods, supplies, and harvested crops. Design relied on materials, weight distribution, and terrain knowledge. Efficient transport supported trade, travel, and daily life. Vikings adapted engineering to practical needs, showing innovation in problem-solving and survival. Chapter 74. Vikings understood weather patterns. Observation of clouds, wind, and sea currents helped predict storms or favorable sailing conditions. Knowledge was empirical, based on years of experience. Accurate forecasting saved lives and resources, showing Vikings blended observation, trial, and practical science in their maritime adventures. Chapter 75. Vikings used flint and steel to start fires. Fire was essential for cooking, warmth, and protection. Mastery of ignition was a survival skill, learned and passed down. Controlling fire demonstrated practical knowledge of materials, chemistry, and human ingenuity, crucial for life in challenging northern climates. Chapter 76. Vikings often carved intricate designs into wood, metal, and bone. Art was integrated with utility, decorating weapons, jewelry, and tools. Patterns told stories, symbolized protection, and displayed status. Craftsmanship reflected creativity, technical skill, and cultural identity, blending function and beauty seamlessly in everyday objects. Chapter 77. Vikings kept detailed mental maps of rivers, forests, and coastlines. Memory guided raiding, trade, and exploration. Combining observation, experience, and strategy, they navigated effectively without written maps. Knowledge of geography was critical, showing Vikings relied on experience and science to travel efficiently across diverse terrain. Chapter 78. Vikings trained in archery. Bows and arrows were used for hunting and combat, requiring strength, precision, and timing. Skill determined survival and effectiveness in battle. Archery combined practice, physical ability, and observation, reflecting how Vikings maximized efficiency and resourcefulness in both life and war. Chapter 79. Vikings practiced legal systems called things. Communities gathered to discuss disputes, law, and justice. Decisions were collective, ensuring fairness and accountability. These gatherings were democratic in nature, showing Vikings valued rules, debate, and social order alongside exploration and warfare. Governance balanced community needs with individual responsibility. Chapter 80. Vikings were observant of tides and river currents. Knowledge of water flow aided fishing, travel, and raiding. Timing and placement depended on careful observation and experience. Understanding nature allowed strategic planning, demonstrating that Viking success relied on practical science, environmental awareness, and tactical thinking. Chapter 81. Vikings often used iron nails and rivets to build longships. Precise placement ensured durability and flexibility in rough seas. Shipbuilding combined material science, engineering, and craftsmanship. Every nail mattered for survival, showing Vikings applied practical knowledge to create vessels capable of crossing oceans and rivers with speed and safety. Chapter 82. Vikings were skilled hunters. They tracked deer, elk, and birds using observation, patience, and knowledge of animal behavior. Hunting supplied food, hides, and tools. Success required understanding terrain, weather, and timing. Vikings blended survival instincts with learned techniques, proving they were as resourceful on land as they were at sea. Chapter 83. Vikings valued oral contracts and agreements. Business and trade often relied on spoken promises, witnessed by the community. Trust and reputation were essential. Breaking an agreement could damage status and social standing. Oral law reinforced honesty, collaboration, and accountability, showing Vikings relied on social intelligence as much as strength. Chapter 84. Vikings practiced weaving and textile production. Wool and flax were spun into cloth for clothing, sails, and bedding. Weaving required skill, patience, and knowledge of materials. Crafting textiles supported trade, daily life, and survival, demonstrating how Vikings combined artistry with practical functionality in their communities. Chapter 85. Vikings used animal bones for tools and ornaments. Bones were carved into needles, combs, and decorative items. Crafting required precision and creativity. Using natural resources efficiently reflected ingenuity. Every object served multiple purposes, blending utility, art, and tradition, showing Vikings maximized available materials for survival and expression. Chapter 86. Vikings had knowledge of tides and coastal geography. Understanding the sea's rhythm helped in navigation, raiding, and fishing. Observation of currents, sandbars, and estuaries was crucial for timing and safety. Science and experience merged to guide seafaring decisions, reflecting Vikings' deep awareness of their environment. Chapter 87. Vikings trained dogs for hunting and protection. Breeds were selected for size, strength, and intelligence. Dogs assisted in tracking prey and guarding property. Training required patience and strategy, demonstrating that Vikings valued partnership with animals and understood behavior and loyalty as tools for survival. Chapter 88. Vikings carved runes into wood, stone, and metal to communicate and preserve information. Runes were symbolic, sometimes magical, and used for rituals, memorials, or messages. This writing system reflected both practicality and spirituality, blending communication, artistry, and belief in a compact symbolic language. Chapter 89. Vikings used snowshoes and skis for winter travel. Movement across snow-covered terrain was essential for hunting, raiding, and exploration. Understanding weight distribution and terrain allowed efficient travel. Adaptation to climate showed ingenuity, turning environmental challenges into strategic advantages for mobility and survival. Chapter 90. Vikings collected honey and mead. Bees provided sweeteners, and fermentation turned honey into alcoholic drinks. Production required knowledge of bees, fermentation, and storage. Honey and mead weren't just food and drink. They supported nutrition, trade, and rituals, reflecting Vikings' integration of science, craft, and culture in daily life. Chapter 91. Vikings used shields creatively in ceremonies and rituals. Painted with symbols or clan designs, they represented identity, protection, and status. Shields weren't only for battle. They communicated allegiance, honored gods, and displayed artistry. Every pattern and placement carried meaning, blending culture, strategy, and symbolism in Viking life. Chapter 92. Vikings understood metallurgy. They layered iron and steel to make stronger, flexible weapons. Knowledge of heating, hammering, and cooling allowed production of swords, axes, and tools that lasted longer and performed better. Craftsmanship combined science, skill, and practicality, giving Vikings an edge in survival, combat, and exploration. Chapter 93. Vikings often practiced sailing with knowledge of tides, currents, and wind patterns. Mastering these factors allowed long-distance travel across oceans and rivers. Observation, experience, and experimentation were key. Sailing was both art and science, allowing Vikings to navigate vast territories and expand influence across Europe and North America. Chapter 94. Vikings valued storytelling and poetry. Skalds recited epic sagas combining history, myth, and moral lessons. Stories educated, entertained, and inspired bravery. Oral tradition preserved culture, connected generations, and reinforced identity. Narratives were carefully crafted to teach lessons while keeping listeners engaged, showing Vikings understood the power of words. Chapter 95. Vikings used tools like axes, hammers, and knives in daily life. Each tool was designed for efficiency in work, combat, or crafting. Mastery required skill, strength, and knowledge of materials. Tools were extensions of human ability, reflecting how Vikings merged innovation, practicality, and craftsmanship in survival and productivity. Chapter 96. Vikings practiced herbal medicine, using plants for healing wounds, pain, and infections. Knowledge was passed through observation and experience. Remedies supported survival on long voyages and harsh winters. Practical science blended with tradition, showing that Vikings valued experimentation and knowledge for health and well-being. Chapter 97. Vikings built fortified sites with wooden walls and ditches to protect villages. Ring forts and defensive settlements allowed monitoring, coordination, and strategic defense. Engineering required planning, understanding of materials, and adaptation to terrain. Fortifications combined safety, organization, and tactical thinking, reflecting Viking intelligence beyond raids. Chapter 98. Vikings observed animal behavior for hunting and prediction. Birds, fish, and wildlife provided clues about seasons, weather, and nearby resources. Understanding nature was crucial for survival and strategic planning. Observation and interpretation of animals turned instincts into practical science, guiding Viking decisions in daily life and exploration. Chapter 99. Vikings engaged in long-distance trade, connecting Europe, Asia, and beyond. Goods like furs, metals, and crafts were exchanged. Trade required negotiation, planning, and trust. Commerce spread wealth, knowledge, and culture, showing Vikings were not only raiders but also strategic merchants shaping economies across continents. Chapter 100. Vikings preserved knowledge through runes, oral traditions, and artifacts. History, culture, and practical skills were transmitted across generations. Learning was experiential, combining observation, practice, and storytelling. Preservation of knowledge ensured survival, continuity, and influence, showing that Vikings valued memory, education, and cultural legacy as much as exploration and conquest. That was 100 incredible facts about the Vikings, showing their courage, ingenuity, and lasting legacy. From everyday life to epic voyages, they were more than warriors. They were explorers, traders, and storytellers. Thanks for watching, and let these insights inspire curiosity and adventure in your own journey through history.